What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another late night in the Brew-Lab. It's me, Lone Fox, your Brewmaster-in-Chief. And tonight in the Brew-Lab, I'm coming at you with some spoiler talk action. Continuing off where we finished up on the previous spoiler talk, here we are. More alchemy spoilers, and there's quite a few of them. So let's jump right into it. First up, we've got Electrostatic Blast. A lot of these are the first time I'm seeing these, which is the way I like to do my spoilers, as you know. So here we go. We're kind of reading these cards together for the first time. Electrostatic Blast is a 2-mana instant, 1 in a red that deals 2 damage to any target. Okay, but then whenever you cast your next instant sorcery spell, exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play one of those cards until end of turn. Pretty cool, probably in like some sort of burn deck. You'd need a lot of open mana, so you cast this for 2, and then you need to cast something else after you cast this. Maybe something cheap, like a 1 mana shock or something. And then you would exile the 3, and then you'd still need enough mana to cast one of the things that you exiled. Probably in like some low to the ground burn deck that seems to be slowly coalescing, but I'm not sure about it yet. Next up, Brittle Blast. This card I mentioned because I did see it spoiled on Facebook. I mentioned it in my deck tech video from earlier tonight. Go check that out. It's pretty good because it's an answer to the Troll in mono green. So it's like a sideboard card for any deck that plays red. Because right now, the main toughness that you need to deal with is 4. So there's plenty of good spells that already deal with that, like Demon Bolt, etc. But if you Demon Bolt the Troll, it comes back onto the land and ramps and then comes back as a token. It's really resilient. With Brittle Blast, if this permanent would die, exile it instead. And creatures the opponent has on the battlefield that turn perpetually, well, at least until that. So it's creatures and planeswalkers your opponent control perpetually gain. If this permanent would die, exile it instead. So all of the stuff that's on the board at that point gain that. So even the next turn, if you do damage to one of them that gets rid of it, it would get exiled, which is pretty crazy. Pretty damn crazy. Even in that deck, yesterday we saw this guy here, Tormentor's Disciple. It would be spawning, or, you know, conjuring these lightning bolts into your deck. You'd be getting potentially up to 8 out of them, you know, into your library before they get rid of Tormentor's Disciple. That's 8 new 3 damage spells that could potentially exile opponent's creatures. That's really good. Next up, we've got Fearsome Whelp. If only this costed 1 mana and not 2, but still I'm going to give it a try. It's a 2 mana 1/1 flyer. At the beginning of your end step, each dragon card in your hand perpetually gains the spell cost 1 less to cast. Of course, these stack. So if you have multiple of these on the board, and of course, and with every end step, it's going to keep stacking. So that cost reduction gets pretty crazy with your dragons. You can imagine casting, you know, an Inferno of the Star Mounts on turn 4. Interesting. Next up, Arms Scavenger. 2 mana, Human Warrior, 2/2. 1 in a red. At the beginning of your upkeep, draft a card from Arms Scavenger's spellbook. Now, this is going to be a problem because I don't actually know what's in this guy's spellbook. I've had a look around other spoiler sites. I couldn't find. Let's see here. I've got MTG Goldfish also does pretty good spoilers. Maybe we can find it on here. There it is. Do they show us the spellbook? No. So yeah, I mean, there's 15 cards in this guy's spellbook that we can draft whenever, you know, at the beginning of each upkeep. Could be really good. We'll have to find out. Next up, we've got Frenzied Geistblaster, and this one maybe we need to take note of because it's the image that they used for the alchemy, you know, advertising on the website. As you can see here, oh, there's a new article out, by the way, by Marrow. I would go and check it out. But whenever they're talking about alchemy, you see here they've got this guy. So should be good. 2 mana, 2/2 human wizard with prowess. So prowess is back. When remember what prowess does. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, it gets like +1/+1 or something like that. When it ETBs, if there are 20 or more instants or sorcery cards amongst cards in your graveyard, hand, and library, you may discard a card, and if you do, seek an instant or sorcery card. It just randomly selects an instant sorcery card from your library and puts it into your hand. And you don't shuffle after with seek. Pretty cool, actually. Again, in this burn deck, maybe this low to the ground burn deck, I could see playing this alongside the adversary from the previous set. Plenty of cool cards coming around in this burn deck. Brittle Blast, of course, probably the Toralf's disciple. And this card would go in that deck as well. Mono red burn deck was needing like a 3 damage sweeper. So Conductive Current deals 3 damage to each creature. Choose an instant or sorcery card in your hand. It perpetually gains. If the spell would deal non-combat damage to a player, it deals that much damage plus 2 damage instead. Whew, pretty cool. It's going to be unplayable outside of anything other than mono red, really, because of the casting cost, but that's a sweet little card. Next up, we have another crazy card. And it's kind of on curve in a wolf deck. So when it enters the battlefield, you choose one. Either another target wolf or werewolf you control fights target creature you don't control. Or you can, whenever you cast your next wolf or werewolf spell, it gains when this creature enters the battlefield, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. And that doesn't have to happen this turn. That's whenever you next cast your next wolf or werewolf. So you could play this and then turn 5, play the new Piper guy, or I don't know, turn 6, play your Tovolar's Huntmaster. That suddenly you have a 6/6 that fights another creature when it enters the battlefield. Or just having this as a 4/3, fight something when it ETBs, or, you know, it ETBs and you've already got the Tovolar's Huntmaster on the battlefield. Pretty cool card. I think this is, I'm definitely going to be testing this out in my Ghoul Wolf deck on day 1. So don't forget to tune in for that. Next up, we got another dragon. It's cool how they've printed like a little bit of something for everything. There's like even prowess making a comeback. You know, party deck got some help. Everything's getting a little buffs here and there. It's what they said during their press release was that they're trying to like make decks that perhaps not as viable a little bit better with these rebalances. So everything's getting a little bit of love. And dragons, of course, do as well. This guy's interesting. It's a 4/4 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, target land you don't control loses all abilities, except mana abilities. So would that be good against the Facebook combo? I'm not sure. But at the beginning of your upkeep, this permanent deals 2 damage to you unless you sacrifice it. So now that land that you've perpetually given this thing to loses all of its abilities, so really good against obviously Faceless Haven as well, and it deals you 2 damage each turn unless you sacrifice it. I think that's really good against creature lands. That's really good against creature lands. But I don't know if we can fit this dragon in anywhere. The 4 drops, there's already like the Hellkite, there's the Galazeth, there's so many good 4 drops in that deck. The Deluge, the Unexpected Windfall. I don't know if we can squeeze in this guy as well, but we'll have to see. Next up, Expedition Supplier. 3 mana 2/2 human warrior. Whenever Expedition Supplier or another human enters the battlefield under your control, you conjure a card named Utility Knife onto the battlefield. Oh, cool. This ability only triggers once each turn. Utility Knife is one of those equipments that equips upon entering the battlefield. So, and I think it just gives +1/+1. So that's really cool. Whenever any a human you control enters the battlefield, you get to equip a Utility Knife to it, so it just gets a +1/+1. That's really cool in a little like low to the ground humans deck. I really like that. Human warrior deck even could, you know, obviously with the equipment deck. Ooh, equipment deck getting some love with Expedition Supplier. Can't wait to play with that. Next up, we've got an uncommon Faithful Disciple, 2 mana, 2/2, human cleric with vigilance. When it dies, you draw it from its spellbook. We'll have to see what's in that spellbook. Rime Wall Protector. Quick tangent. Of the things that we've seen so far in this digital only stuff, which we know we're all a little bit uncomfortable and like, ooh, trepidation, what's going to happen? The one that I like the least is this drafting from the spellbook, and I have a feeling that because it's very malleable and adaptable, and they can respond to feedback from both the data that they get from us playing the games on Arena, and also just from the the community on Twitter and Instagram and whatever. They'll see which of these things that they've made people respond to best, and maybe in the following patch they'll get rid of the ones that aren't so good or played, and I'm hoping that draft from a spellbook is one of those, because it just feels a little bit too random and weird. Like there's no control that you have over these cards that you draft, and it just adds this element of randomization that's a little bit just too much luck. Already it's a luck-based game, of course, but like, anyway. Rime Wall Protector, 3 mana, 3/4 giant wizard, 1 colorless and 2 blue with ward 1. When it ETBs, each other giant or wizard you control and each other giant or wizard card in your hand perpetually gains ward 1. Wow, that is so cool in the Giants deck. Again, a little bit of love for another tribe that this was like not seeing maybe as much play. Here we go. We got a new sweet little card giving all of your giants ward 1 is huge. Misa Likey. And we get to run that Battle for Bretagard sweeper. I think that was the name of it. No, that's the Selesnya one. What's the sweeper called? Anyway, the giant only sweeper. Really like this. Definitely gonna test it out. Next up, 3 mana sorcery, unexpected conversion. Draw 2 cards. Then you may exile an instant sorcery card from your hand. If you do, search your land or library for any number of cards with the same name. Exile them. Then shuffle. Seek an instant or sorcery card with each for each card exiled from your hand this way. Wow, that's wacky stuff, man. That's really convoluted. So you draw 2 cards and you exile an instant or sorcery card from your hand. If you do, you search your hand and or library for any number of cards with the same name and exile them. So it's maximum 4, unless of course it's let's say the demon bolts that you've conjured off of Torov's Disciple. Then it could be more, because you can have more than 4 in your deck with the same name. Where were we? But anyway, and then you seek an instant or sorcery card for each card exiled from your hand this way. Oh, from your hand. Search your hand. Then that's a really that makes no sense. Then you would only get 1 instant, because you've only exiled 1 card from your hand. Then you may exile an instant or sorcery card from your hand, so you will just draw 1. I mean, you'd only seek 1 card for exiling. That makes no sense. Help me in the comments if you figure that one out. Next up, Sinister Reflections. 2 blue for an instant. Conjure and a duplicate of each of up to 2 target non-token creatures you control into your hand. What? That is sick. Man, this conjure is going to be crazy. Duplicate of each of up to 2 target non-token creatures you control into your hand. That is crazy balls. Holy cannoli. Next up, Tireless Angler. Human Rogue. I have seen this on other people's videos, so I kind of know what's in the spellbook. Whenever an island enters the battlefield under your control, you draft a card from the Angler spellbook. And all of the things, he's a fisherman. It's all like sea creatures. It's like the kraken, the octopus thing. It's all like little fish and sea creatures, and it like every turn you fish one out of the spellbook. I kind of like that flavor text. Cool. Let's see if that ends up seeing any play at all, but seems fun. Maybe in the deck with the The new vampire guy, Kronos or something, who transforms when you top deck a Kraken or Serpent. Or I knew that one of the cards that's in the spellbook is that Kraken from Theros Beyond Death. It makes all your Krakens unblockable. That might be cool. Who knows? Next up, Gutmorn Pact-Bound Servant. 3 mana Demon. Cool. Demon getting a 3-drop. Demon Tribe I've been trying to play around for a while now. Still hasn't quite come out with a sweet brew, but this seems pretty interesting. It's a flying death touch. 1/3, and whenever it enters the battlefield, each player discards a non-land card. Whenever a player discards a card during your turn, they choose another player. So they choose you, obviously, because you're the only other player on the table. That player conjures a duplicate of that card into their hand. Oh, it perpetually gains. You may spend mana as though mana in there. So in a Toga deck, in any kind of discard deck, you'd just like be conjuring a duplicate of whatever your opponent discards as long as this guy's in play. And not only does that happen as a static text, so if you can get him to discard after he's landed, but also just on the turn he lands as well. He has an ETB that makes that happen. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Mythic. All right, then we've got a Planeswalker. This is crazy. You know, of all the things, I was just talking about how I don't like the draw from spellbook thing. Well, here we go. There's a Planeswalker that is focused around that mechanic. Tybalt, Tybalt, Wicked Tormentor. 5 mana, 3 colorless, 2 red. +1, the first one is adds 2 red. Draft a card from Tybalt, the Wicked Tormentor's spellbook. I have no idea what's in this guy's spellbook. Then exile it. Until end of turn, you may cast that card. It's probably spells. I have a feeling it's spells, like red burn spells. Tybalt, Wicked Tormentor deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker unless its controller has Tybalt deal 3 damage to them. If they do, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. A lot of ifs. Okay, so that makes sense. You can do 3 damage to them, but if the opponent doesn't want that to happen, then they can... if they don't want it to deal damage to the creature that you... or planeswalker that you're targeting, they can say, no, I don't want that to go there, and they take it themselves. And if they do, then you can discard a card. And if you do, you can then draw a card. Very convoluted, but pretty cool. Pretty damn cool. Pretty cool. And then there's a -X, where you can create X 1/1 red devil creature tokens that say that when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. I like that. Alongside, you know, our Burn Down the House, our Archduke of Avernus, Zariel. There's a few other devils. Devil Tribal is finally maybe starting to shape up with this card. It'll be interesting to see what's in this card's spellbook before I make any final judgments, but it's definitely looking like a pretty powerful planeswalker. So, wow. Next up, Assemble from Parts, a 1 mana instant. This seems to be zombie vibes. Target creature card in your graveyard perpetually gains 3 mana, 3 colorless and a black. Exile this card from your graveyard. Shuffle it into your library. I don't see why it's like exile from graveyard, but then you shuffle it into your library. Then you create a token that's a copy of that, except it's a 4/4 black zombie in addition to its other type. Activate only as a sorcery. That's pretty freaking good, no? I mean, surely it's kind of a way of reanimating something. You just put, instead of it being in your graveyard, you're putting it back into your library so you can draw it again. But at the same time, you make like a token that's a copy of it, that is a 4/4 zombie in addition to its other types. So, like your Champion of the Perished, you know, you've reanimated it because there's one on the board now that's even bigger than the original one. And the one that you've put in the library you can draw again. That's really strong, I think. Oh, and it's instant speed for 1 mana. That's really good in the zombie deck, I think. Next up, City Stalker Connoisseur. 4 mana, 3/3 with Death Touch. When it ETBs, target opponent discards a card with the greatest mana value among cards in their hand. create a blood token. Meh. This 4-drop slot in the vampire deck is very contested. There's some incredibly good vampires, and let's not talk about Sorin. I don't think this is going to make the cut. Next up, Sanguine Brushstroke. Enchantment. Black enchantment. 3 mana black enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you create a blood token, and you conjure a card named Blood Artist onto the battlefield. Blood Artist, is that the one? Ooh, I don't have my client open. Sorry, I can't check now. Blood Artist, is that the one that makes little bats when it creates blood? Anyway, that's going to be good, I think, in your token deck. 3-drop slots, very contested again, but maybe just like a 2-of in your blood token deck. Getting some love here. Let's see if that really boosts it into being something playable. So far, nothing crazy. I mean, it's already really good, actually. Not really the blood token one, but there's a really good, like, vampire deck. You know, Yellow Hat took it to position 1 on the ladder. Anyway, next up, Veteran Ghoul Caller. 2 mana, 2/1, human rogue with menace. Whenever a card in your graveyard is put into your hand, conjure a duplicate of that card into your hand. That already, alongside with Assemble from Parts. Well, there's, Crawl from the Cellar even. You could Crawl from the Cellar, your Champion of the Perished, and then you just have another champ. That is nuts in your zombie deck. Or in many other decks I can think of already, just like first time reading this card already, my mind is going. Are you, man, this conjure stuff is ridiculous. Can you imagine, okay, you've got, they kill your Champion of the Perished. Next turn you play Ghoul Caller, whenever a card in, so then you play your Crawl from the Cellar. It's like, put a counter on a zombie, return target card from graveyard to your hand. Then you can cast it again, but you'd conjure a second one, so you could cast 2, and they'd trigger off of each other. Wow. And I think if it's a duplicate, it's not a token, so that card could also then die and end up in the graveyard and be brought back. I mean, if I'm reading this correctly, the card that is conjured is an actual full-on card that ends up in your graveyard and can be reanimated and shuffled into your library, etc. So you're adding to your library size with this conjure thing. So you would essentially then have 2 freaking, this is going to be crazy with Champion of the Perished, and then your opponent's like scrambling, let's say he kills 1, it ends up in your graveyard, you redo the whole thing again. Man, that's going to be nuts. That's going to be nuts. Next up, Puppet Raiser, another zombie wizard. Oh, this time it shares both creature types. It's usually either a zombie that kind of does things with wizards, or wizards that are, in the zombie deck. This is both. Cool. 4 mana, 3/3. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard. If you do, seek a creature card with mana value equal to the mana value of that card, +1. That card perpetually gains menace. Wow. So, like, even if it's like one of these duplicates that you've made, conjured with the Veteran Ghoul Caller, for example, ends up in your graveyard again, you can exile it with Puppet Raiser and then seek your library for something that's mana value 2, because your Champion of Perished is 1, so you could get your, I don't know, whatever, Jadar or something, and it just, that card also gains menace. That's so cool, perpetually. Predatory Sludge. Ooze Tribe getting a bit of love. You know what oozes always try and do? They're like just kind of resilient, stick around, they spawn more of themselves and oozy stuff. This fits the bill. I've seen this one on Facebook already today. Yes. Predatory Sludge, 3 mana, 3/3 with menace. When it ETBs, you choose a permanent you don't control. When the chosen permanent is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you conjure a card named Predatory Sludge into your hand. So you like remove that thing, you make another sludge, you play it, you name another thing. You remove that thing, it ends up in the battlefield, you create another sludge. And then, so pretty cool. And, you know, it's looking like a Golgari deck. If you want to make Ooze Tribal, we've got the other Ooze guy that exiles things. We've got plenty of green Oozes. Definitely going to be trying Ooze Tribal. You know me. I won't be able to help myself. Next up, and we're getting close to the end here. Thanks for bearing with me. It's a long one. Cursebound Witch. 1 mana, 1/2. When it dies, draft a card from its spellbook. No idea what's in there. Might be relevant. Human Warlock. 1/2. 1 mana. Let's see. Break Expectations. 1 mana sorcery. Target player reveals all cards with mana value 2 or greater in their hand. Boop. You choose a card from among those cards. Exile that card. If a card was exiled this way, it will be exiled this way. I mean, unless they have no cards that are mana value 2 or greater in their hand. That player drafts a card from Break Expectations spellbook and reveals it. So the opponent that... Okay, so I guess you can do it on yourself because of the if clause. You can reveal, you can target yourself, reveal your hand. You pick something with mana value 3 or greater that you don't really care about. Just exile it. Then you get to draft from the spellbook. I don't know what's in the spellbook. It better be bloody good for it to be so convoluted. And then you also have to reveal it. But if you don't do it that way and you do it on the opponent and you get him to discard or exile a card that has mana value 3 or greater from their hand, and they get the card from Break Expectations spellbook. So either they're the type of cards that, like, when you cast them, it's sort of detrimental to yourself, then that would make sense. But giving your opponent cards is always a bad thing 99% of the time. So not sure about this one. We'll have to see how it actually plays out on board. Next and last but not least, Sap Vitality. 2 mana. Cool that they're doing these, like 2 blue pips for a instant speed thing for blue. Here's a black one. 2 black pips, instant speed, deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. This has been interesting. Like lately, this is the second card that where black deals damage in a way that red usually would. Instead of saying destroy, it deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. You choose a creature card in your hand. It perpetually gets +3/+0. It's cool that you don't, like, that's the point about this perpetually, that you couldn't do in paper. If it was in paper, you'd have to reveal that card so that your opponent knows, and we both know that the card that this is the one that's perpetually getting the +3/+0. In this case, the game just keeps track of that, and your opponent trusts you completely that you're not, playing a different card and being like, oh wait, I'm gonna say it's this one, because the game like tags the one that you pick. So okay. That's it for today. Oh, what am I talking about? Woohoo! Ooh, woohoo! We just got a bunch more. It must have been in that last refresh. Wow, some mythics. All right, we continue. 3 mana, 2/4 Angel with flying, of course. When it enters the battlefield, it becomes day. It can't become night. Oh, that is cray-cray. Your opponent can't cast spells with mana value greater than the number of turns they have begun. Okay. Opponent can't cast spells with mana value greater than the number of turns they have begun. Cool. That's another taxation. And, cards that, decks that care about nighttime a lot, like werewolves and stuff, that would hate this. Nice, interesting. Weird new tool coming to a digital format near you. Next up, epic art, Rahilda, the Feral Outlaw. Not dual-sided, or it must be. It's nightbound. Oh, here we go. Okay, yeah. The other side was right there next to it. Ooh. Rahilda, the Wanted Cutthroat. So it comes into play as the Wanted Cutthroat if it's daytime. It's a 2/2 with first strike. When it deals combat damage to a player, you exile a non-land card from their library at random. During any turn you attacked with a wolf or werewolf, you may cast that card, and you may... So it's kind... Wow. Doesn't have haste, but it's like the what was it called? Oh my goodness, the 2-mana haster from Eldraine, roguey guy that stole the thief, something thief. Anyway, you know what I mean. Except this like exiles the card randomly from the library, not from the opponent's hand. Oh, no, it was the other guy was from the top of the library. This is a random from the library, which is, you know, digital only possible. And then whenever you attack with a wolf or a werewolf, after that, you can then, that card will be castable that you've exiled from the opponent's deck. And on its backside, it becomes a 2/2 with double strike. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, it does the same thing. But this time you'd be getting 2 cards, obviously, because of the double strike. Wow. If you could grow this, give it trample. Interesting. Interesting. Completely new avenue for werewolves to potentially try and build around. Some sort of steal the stuff from your deck. I could see playing that Curse of Hospitality that I had in my enchantment deck a few days ago, where you're also stealing stuff from the opponent's library and gives all your creatures trample when they're attacking. Ooh. Oh, ha, ha. Creative juices flowing, boys and girls. Alright, next up, Geist Pack Alpha. 4 mana, 5/4 with trample. When it dies, you seek a permanent card with mana value equal to the number of lands you control. When it dies, you seek a permanent card. Wow. That seems pretty crazy. Although, if you go over the amount, then you might not find anything, because there'll be nothing with that exact mana value in your deck. So you'll have to play around with your lands carefully. But that might be pretty cool. It's a wolf. I'll have to see if that ends up seeing any play at all. Next up, Grizzled Huntmaster. 3 mana. There's a lot of Huntmasters. 3 mana, 4/3 human warrior. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile a creature card from your hand. If you do, search your hand and library for any number of cards with the same name. Exile them. Then shuffle. Choose a creature card you own from outside the game. Conjure a duplicate of that card into your hand for each card exiled from your hand this way. That's mind-meltingly complicated. Into the battlefield. Exile a creature card from your hand. No, okay. I mean, we get it, but that's really convoluted. I wonder... So you just have a sideboard of, like, creatures that you want to, you know, bring in from outside the battlefield. From outside the game, like in your lesson board, let's say. Interesting. Hinterland Chef, Human Scout. 3 mana, 3/3. When it ATBs, draft a card from its spellbook. It perpetually becomes a food artifact in addition to its other types, and perpetually gains tap 2. Sacrifice a creature, you gain 3 life. Ooh, so a little bit of food love coming back into standard or alchemy and historic, essentially. Cool. I wonder if that'll fit into any of the food decks already existing. There's a Golgari one that just won the championship. But we'll have to see. And finally, last but not least, Holohenge Wrangler. 5 mana, 6/6. When it ETBs, seek a land card. Discard a land card. Conjure a card named Holohenge Beast into your hand. You may also activate this ability while Holohenge Wrangler is in your graveyard. Crazy stuff. Seek a land card. So it'll just grab a random land card from your library, not shuffle. Just put it into your hand. And then you can discard that land and conjure this Holohenge Beast, which I'm not sure what it is. And then you may also do this while it's in the graveyard. Cool. We'll have to see what Holohenge Beast is. See whether that makes any sense. Alrighty. We finally made it to the end. Thank you so much for sticking around. I will see you all tomorrow with some fresh brews, as well as some continued spoiler talk content. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And until then, this is Lone Fox from the Brew-Lab signing out. Peace, y'all.